our houses have been completely destroyed. We are thankful and grateful to our government's officials for visiting the area and providing urgent support in a timely manner, but we are asking the international community for further aid.
Rescue operations continue in remote mountain districts, where families are still searching for survivors under the rubble and waiting for urgent help to arrive.
A new 5.5 magnitude earthquake struck the southeast of Afghanistan as condolences and aid continue to pour into the country following the deadly quake that hit on Sunday. Our Tamim Bahis brings more on the international response to the disaster.
According to the World Health Organization, an estimated 12,000 people have been affected by the powerful quake that struck Kunar and Nangarhar provinces. WHO says it was among the first responders delivering emergency health kits to hospitals treating the wounded. Azerbaijan was among the first to react. In a statement, the Azerbaijani Foreign Ministry said, "We extend our heartfelt condolences to the families of the victims and wish a speedy recovery to all those injured. Our thoughts and prayers are with the people of Afghanistan during this difficult time." Leaders from across the region and beyond have also voiced their sympathy. India has pledged to send tents and food supplies, while Iran and Pakistan announced readiness to provide humanitarian aid. Turkey, Japan and Qatar expressed solidarity with the United Nations and European Union, promising to spare no effort in helping those in need. The United Arab Emirates has already deployed a rescue team with food, medicine and shelter tents. The United Kingdom pledged £1 million in aid. Other countries including Canada, Bangladesh, Indonesia and Syria have also sent condolences and pledged support. Inside Afghanistan, authorities say the armed forces have been ordered to use all available resources in the rescue operation, while the Foreign Ministry is coordinating with international partners to accelerate humanitarian assistance. This is Tamim Bahis in Kabul for AnewZ.
Turkey has welcomed the dissolvement of the OSCE Minsk process and its related structures, describing it as an important step in advancing peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia. In an official statement, the Foreign Ministry said the decision marks a significant stage in the peace process between the two neighbouring countries. Ankara emphasised that the closure of the outdated structure underscores the progress made on the ground and reflects the reality of the new regional order shaped after the restoration of Azerbaijan's territorial integrity. Georgia was absent from the recent Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit held in China, but officials insist their partnership with Beijing remains strong. For more on that, we go to Tbilisi and our Nini Nikolashvili.
As leaders from across the region gathered in China for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit, Georgia was notably absent. Neighboring countries like Azerbaijan and Armenia used the platform to upgrade their partnerships with major global powers, while Georgia, despite holding the status of an official strategic partner of Beijing, remains on the sidelines. Prime Minister Irakli Qobakhidze responded to questions about this absence, stressing that the parade in China was part of the SCO framework and that attendance should not be overinterpreted. He underlined that cooperation with Beijing is a priority, calling the China-Georgia strategic partnership precious and important, and promising new steps to strengthen it politically and economically. But China is only one side of Georgia's global partnership web. On the other side lies the United States, where relations have cooled in recent years. Echoing the president's appeal, Qobakhidze voiced the government's desire to restart ties with Washington from a clean slate, presenting a roadmap for renewed cooperation. He noted that the lack of attention from the Trump administration was surprising, suggesting it may reflect the influence of what he called the deep state. Still, he insisted that if this influence does not prevail, nothing would prevent the revival of the strategic partnership. It's also worth noting that this appeal comes against the backdrop of Georgia's two neighbors in the South Caucasus. Azerbaijan and Armenia having taken steps to upgrade their respective relations with the United United States. On August 8, Azerbaijan and the United States signed a memorandum of understanding aimed at developing a strategic partnership charter, while Armenia concluded new agreements that build upon existing bilateral arrangements. The picture that emerges is a Georgia caught between two global poles, seeking to protect its bond with China while struggling to reanimate its once vital alliance with the United States. In the meantime, as regional neighbors deepen their own ties with great powers, Tbilisi faces growing questions over whether this pause in partnerships leaves the country isolated and how that isolation could shape both its foreign policy and domestic political debates. It's Nini Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi, AnewZ.
Beijing hosted the 8th Kazakhstan-China Business Council meeting. More than 70 agreements and contracts were signed. And for the details, we go to Almaty and our Fariza Kalamurzina.
Kazakhstan and China have signed more than 70 agreements and contracts valued at over $15 billion during the Kazakhstan-China Business Council held in Beijing. The event brought together over 500 participants, including representatives from leading corporations of both countries. China has already invested over $27 billion in Kazakhstan's economy. More than 6,000 companies with Chinese capital operate in Kazakhstan. Cooperation spans energy, transport, agriculture, industry and innovation. A key project is the construction of Alatau City in partnership with China State Construction Engineering Corporation, covering 88,000 hectares. The city is set to become a new hub for technological innovation and the digital economy. In industry, Sinopec is investing $7.4 billion in a polyethylene production plant in the Atyrau region. Also, CNPC is involved in modernizing the Shymkent refinery, while China Huadian is building a 160-megawatt combined cycle power plant in Mangostau. Several joint projects are also underway in rare earth metal processing, glass production, car assembly and electric buses, all involving Chinese companies. Kazakhstan is strengthening its role as a key transit hub between China and Europe. Around 85% of overland cargo traffic under the Belt and Road Initiative passes through the country. In last year, freight volumes on the Trans-Caspian route increased by 62%. The introduction of double tracks on the Dostok-Mount intersection, President Tokayev says, will boost the corridor's capacity fivefold. While the financial figures are strong and projects ambitious, experts say the challenge lies in balancing economic growth with Kazakhstan's strategic independence, requiring careful decisions and clear cooperation frameworks. From Almaty, Kazakhstan, Fariza Kalamurzina, AnewZ.
And finally, we go to Turkey, where the tourism sector is breaking records. Our Aliya Aziz has all the figures in Istanbul.
Turkey is setting new records in tourism after transforming the sector into one of the fastest growing and most resilient parts of its economy. Over the past 2 decades, the country has invested in education, health, transport, infrastructure, defense, and tourism. Since 2018, tourism ranks among Turkey's top export sectors. This came with the creation of the Turkey Tourism Promotion and Development Agency, working with airlines like Turkish Airlines, Turkey's travel campaign Go Turkey. The agency launched global campaigns in more than 200 countries, dramatically expanding demand. Visitor numbers surged from 38 million in 2017 to more than 62 million in 2024, making this a historic record. Turkey is offering more than 60 experiences, from the traditional cuisine and health tourism to sports, archaeology, cruises, and cultural festivals. Tourism has now spread across all 81 provinces in the country. Culinary tourism has been a standout, with Istanbul, Izmir, Bodrum, Muğla, and Cappadocia all earning a place in the prestigious Michelin Guide. And by linking tourism with Turkey's vast cultural heritage, the country has created a hybrid model that blends high-tech innovation with tradition. Officials say this is just the beginning, with Turkey's tourism sector expected to break new records for the future. For AnewZ, this is AnewZ, Istanbul, Turkey.
And that's the news update from us in Baku this morning. Stay tuned to AnewZ for more updates.
We are ready to welcome everyone to come to Gabela and to make unforgettable memories.
Welcome to Gabela rafting.
This territory is the most important place in our history. Our ancestors lived here 2,000 years ago, and they had here amazing culture, amazing civilization.
There's something for everyone here. This place is the largest amusement park in Azerbaijan.
Our guests love to have meal in this atmosphere.
Yeah.
You know, you see you're in nature, in the forest, and the good food.
It's 6 tons, 579 liters.
And it's a lot of wine.
And biggest cask in the world.
Bandar is not just a holiday destination. It's a symbol of Azerbaijan's growing tourism potential.
The doors are open. Welcome to Gabela, Azerbaijan.
Tonight on NewsHour, Britain's leadership team is getting a refresh. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has updated his top team, signalling what he calls the second phase of his administration. The reshuffle brings in figures tasked with strengthening coordination, sharpening delivery and widening expertise. At the centre of this move is Darren Jones, stepping into a newly created post with oversight across all government departments. His mandate is clear: improve the way government translates policy into action. At the same time, Manoush Shafiq, a respected economist with global experience, she joins to advise on Britain's most pressing financial challenges. Alongside them, a revamp of communication aims to give Downing Street a firmer grip on the message reaching the public. Well, the announcement comes at a time when voters are questioning whether promises made last year can actually be realised. Starmer's team now faces the task of proving that it can deliver. Tonight we examine what these appointments mean, how they reshape power inside Number 10, and whether they can steady a government entering its next stage. First, let's get the latest from our correspondent in the UK, Ollie Barrett, who is in London.
Well, when is a reshuffle not a reshuffle? Certainly that is not the word that government sources are using to describe what Keir Starmer has been doing over the last 24 hours or so, and that may be partly because actually we're being guided towards there being a reshuffle of some junior ministerial governmental posts perhaps taking place next week. What has happened is that Darren Jones has been moved from his previous position as Chief Secretary to the Treasury, a key role in the government's financial operations, into a newly created role at Downing Street in Number 10, working alongside the Prime Minister. Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister will be his new title, and we're being led to believe that he will be really focused on delivery, making sure that the Prime Minister's priorities for government are pushed through as rapidly as possible. There have been some other changes, some communications roles, civil service roles in and around Keir Starmer's top team that are also being shaken up. Keir Starmer says this is because he spent the first year in office, in his words, fixing the foundations. Labour say that they were some shaky foundations bequeathed to them by the Conservatives, the previous government. The Conservatives would obviously dispute that, and Keir Starmer is now saying that year two is all about delivery, all about moving forward as quickly as possible. Of course, critics of the government say that what's actually happening here is that the Labour government has found it very difficult in its first year. It's become very unpopular according to all of the polls. It's found it difficult to grapple with serious issues like immigration, like the state of the health service, like the economy as well. And now Keir Starmer's having to shake up his top team to try and get a grip on some of those issues. He's been holding his first cabinet with that new top team in place as Parliament returns from its summer recess, and he's trying to regain some of the political momentum from opposition parties like Reform, led by Nigel Farage, who've been very vocal over the course of the summer with regards to, for example, in particular, issues around illegal migration and small boat crossings. One of the other suggestions is that perhaps the Chancellor, the Finance Minister, Rachel Reeves, is being sidelined in some way by this move from Darren Jones from the Treasury to Number 10. Government sources are telling AnewZ that that is not what is happening here. If anything, they are telling us that this is a beefing up of Number 10's economic wisdom and know-how, so that Number 10 and 11, Keir Starmer's office and Rachel Reeves' office, can work more closely together, if anything, ahead of a crucial budget coming up in the coming weeks, which will contain clearly some very difficult decisions for a Chancellor who looks set to have to either raise taxes or cut public spending in a significant way, or a combination of the two. So the government knows it's got some huge challenges to grapple with in the coming weeks and months, and this rearranging of Keir Starmer's top team is designed to put them in the best position possible to achieve all of that. As I say, critics insist it's just an indication of a first year in office in which things have not gone according to plan for the new Labour government. Ollie Barrett in London for AnewZ.
Well, as Britain's leader is reshaping his core team, signalling a new phase of governance, the focus is less on personalities and more on tightening control at the centre. Let's take a look in more depth.
Britain's government is signalling a shift in approach as key figures are drafted into Number 10 to drive the Prime Minister's agenda forward. The move, described by officials as a mini reshuffle, is designed less to alter personalities than to refocus priorities. At the forefront is Darren Jones, now serving as Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. His position is newly established, reflecting the need for greater coordination at the heart of government. By placing Jones directly under the Prime Minister, the intention is to cut through departmental silos, ensuring policies are not only announced, but actually delivered. Joining him is Baroness Minouche Shafik, an internationally recognised economist. Her appointment is a clear signal of the government's focus on economic stability. With Britain grappling with weak growth, persistent inflationary pressures, and a restless electorate, Shafik's role will be central in shaping strategies to restore confidence and competitiveness. Communications are also being reinforced. Tim Allen, once a Labour advisor and later a strategic consultant, returns to strengthen the government's message. For Starmer, whose leadership has sometimes been criticised as technocratic, effective communication may prove as critical as policy itself. These moves come as Labour confronts multiple challenges: rising support for Reform UK, a public wary of economic drift, and persistent questions over migration and health services all weigh heavily. By recalibrating the team, Starmer aims to signal that delivery, not rhetoric, is now the priority. Critics, however, warn that creating new posts may add bureaucracy rather than reduce it. Skeptics question whether more advisors and reorganised titles will translate into tangible results. Others argue that the shake-up reflects a lack of confidence in the Treasury, with Number 10 tightening its grip on fiscal planning. Still, supporters view the changes as overdue. With Jones providing discipline, Shafik offering economic gravitas, and Allen sharpening the message, Labour hopes to reset the narrative heading into the second half of its mandate. Whether the public is convinced remains to be seen. This is not a government collapse nor a major overhaul, but it is a deliberate attempt to reassert control. As Starmer puts it, the second phase has begun, and its success will be measured by whether plans on paper become progress in practice.
OK, joining us now to discuss this further is the political commentator Philip Churm, joining us from Devon in the UK. Phil, always great to have you on the show. Give us your sort of first reactions to this then. Do you think this reshuffle strengthens the PM's hand?
Well, to be honest, guys, something needs to. It has been a bad summer for Keir Starmer. If we look at the various kind of news coverage, there's been a rise in protests against migrants by the far right. There have been painting of St. George's flags on pretty much everything white. Increase in support also on the left for a breakaway left-wing party and anti-racist groups and pro-Palestinian groups. So it really remains to be seen whether this is going to strengthen the Prime Minister's hand, because there's an awful lot of work to do on that direction. What it does, I think, more than anything else, is it demonstrates a need for experience within government, which may have been lacking to some extent over the last year, especially in the area of communications. As we've mentioned, there is the now the installation of the Blairite Tim Allen and the Uber loyalist Steph Driver to be able to try and push that communications agenda, because there's been a general erosion in the centre of politics in the UK, and if Keir Starmer is going to be able to try and rebuild that in some way, there's quite a lot of work to do.
And Phil, this role that Mr. Jones has received, this new position, is attracting a lot of attention. We know we've had the official title of Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, but what do you expect that role to be doing in reality day to day? Is he the new Dominic Cummings, or perhaps even the new Malcolm Tucker? You know, is he going to be the person that really runs things day to day?
Well, there's certainly going to be a lot of focus on this role. Darren Jones, I mean, he comes with great experience. He was effectively deputy to the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, before getting this job. He's known to be very tough on the economy, but he's also known to be quite progressive, even radical in some other areas, to do with social policy and things. It is, however, let's look at this in a slightly more cynical way, it's a shrewd move, because the role is quite useful to Keir Starmer, who's been blamed for an awful lot that's gone wrong. Now he has someone else to shift some of that responsibility to if things don't go exactly to plan. So it's an important role. There'll be a lot of focus on it. We're going to see an awful lot of Darren Jones on the TV cameras over the next year or so, but it's also going to carry a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, very interesting. Another key role that's attracted a lot of attention is Manoush Shafiq's appointment. How significant is that for economic strategy, do you think?
Most people in the UK will have no idea who she is. But as we do begin to perhaps realise a little bit about her background, we know that she comes with extremely sound financial credentials. Former Deputy Governor of the Bank of England, an economist with many years' experience, and in a great position to be able to help advise the government, advise the Treasury on the next stage, because I think there's going to be quite a lot happening over the next few months and years. She may, unfortunately, be better known to people looking at the international agenda as the president of Columbia University in the US, and she was kind of forced to resign over the handling of pro-Palestinian protests. So there are some people who may now look at her who are on the left of British politics who still have a sense of resentment as to the way in which she handled those protests, and maybe a little less forgiving. But in terms of her actual economic knowledge, there's little to question about it. She comes from a good background.
So a focus on competence, a focus on reclaiming the centre ground to some degree. But with these two big appointments in particular, do you think in any way this suggests a lack of confidence in the Treasury, perhaps some sense of a lack of confidence in Rachel Reeves herself?
Well, Keir Starmer has historically shown big support for his Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. He's backed her. He has said he's behind the policies. But, you've got to remember many of those actual policies are his. They're policies that were introduced in the election last year in the manifesto. So he carries a lot of responsibility for that. But there is going to be a difficult autumn ahead. Now, the autumn budget, which is expected in the next couple of months, Rachel Reeves has this seemingly impossible task of trying to change the tax system effectively in various ways without losing voters or destabilising the financial markets in various ways. So they're looking at things like property tax and inheritance and the various ways in which money is going to be taken. Or are there going to be cuts, all of which are going to be unpopular to certain sections of the population? Now, because of that, she's going to need all the help and support she can get. So any radical change is going to need strength, and Starmer is trying to make sure it's there. And this is why I think that although there is a certain amount of there has been some doubt in Rachel Reeves by other parts of the Labour Party, other parts of government, and certainly outside of it, I think what he's trying to do now is to make sure that any major changes that take place in the next few months relating to the economy are done on the soundest possible basis and with the soundest possible advice. So I think any confidence is trying to be built rather than lost at the stage.
And Phil, the party machine has spoken a lot about a focus on delivery now, not on rhetoric or personalities. Obviously, there are going to be some tough circumstances that voters are not going to like. But what do you expect in terms of voters seeing real positive change or announcements following this reshuffle?
Right. In the short term, they won't. And I don't think many people are expecting short-term gain. The voters are quite vociferously still talking about immigration. They're talking about public services, cost of living, the cost of utilities, the general sort of standard of life that they have. Those are what matter. They're not worried so much as what the messages are that are coming out of number 10 at the moment. And until they do see these changes, they're unlikely to respond very much at all. So I think in the short term, Labour in any local elections is still likely to get hit, but it could be a number of years until the general election. So maybe over a period of time, with a strong enough crew around him, Starmer can actually regain some of the momentum that he has lost over the last year.
And Phil, in terms of trying to win back some of those sceptical supporters to regain, as you say, that momentum, what is a sensible strategy for the Prime Minister, for the government? Because when you're in the centre, which way do you go? Do you try and win voters back who are on the left, or do you try and appeal to voters who are slightly more on the right? Any sense in how this new team is going to think about that plan?
They definitely need a plan, and in order to be able to bring back sceptical voters, and the appointment of Tim Allen and Steph Driver are undoubtedly part of that process to be able to do it. But let's have a look at where that working class sceptical voter has gone, because this is what's key to Labour. Traditionally, Labour was supported by the working class in the UK. But the working class vote sceptics have gone to Reform, because Reform is delivering simple messages. They're managing to rally support. The ones that haven't gone to Reform have gone to left-wing groups who are presenting what they might be seen as being socialist alternatives. So Labour are going to begin to win back some support when voters can see clear, undiluted action on the issues which actually matter to them. In simple, so not like that kind of soft, we would like to do this kind of approach, but actual fairly sort of hard-hitting results. And they do have a massive communications task, not just to be able to say what they would like to do, but what they have achieved in ways that the traditional working class voter understands.
It's very interesting, Phil, because I suppose implicit in that is the assumption that voters aren't inherently socialist or inherently right-wing. They're not ideologues. They're people that are crying out for action to be taken, and the potential here is, if things can improve, that they might forget about these ideological posturing and actually come back to support the government.
Yeah. I think that's without the case. I mean, the bottom line is that most people are interested in politics because of what politics can do for them. Well, they want representatives who are delivering. They want representatives who can hopefully ensure that their child goes to a good school, that if they break a leg, that it's going to be treated well, and it's these sorts of things. And when those things start to happen, which is why both ends of the political spectrum, both the right and the left, are saying that they have solutions to it. They're very different solutions, but those are the kind of areas that they're focusing on. So until the centre ground of politics, and that's not just Labour, but the Conservatives, because it's something that both the Labour and Conservatives have failed to do in 15 years, is trying to have a set of policies that sees something tangibly different.
This sense, Phil, at the moment with the current strategy, and potentially and echoed with this reshuffle, that policies are more important than personalities. Do you think that belies the fact that Starmer may have a fundamental personality problem when it comes to voters? I mean, in the last few weeks alone, we've seen videos on social media of the PN discussing his love of football, how he went to school with Fatboy Slim, but clearly there's something missing, there's something not resonating. It feels at times like Alan Partridge talking to the builders, or the cringy teacher at school trying to win over the pupils. The public can hear the words, but do they really believe him?
I think it's an interesting tactic, and it's been used by an awful lot of prime ministers over the years. I can remember Tony Blair talking about who his favourite rock band was, and his, the football matches he likes to go to, and the TV programmes he likes to watch. And he suddenly realised, this guy's running a country. How does he have so much time to be able to entertain all of these things?
Phil, sorry to interrupt, but there was a trace of believability about. You could imagine that Tony Blair may actually have listened to the Stone Roses, for example. There was because of the charisma, he was able to pull it off just to some degree.
I've met Keir Starmer. I've interviewed Keir Starmer. And what you say about that particular image is, I would say, is quite true. And speaking quite frankly, there is a sense of him being permanently slightly guarded. But what I would say about that is that he is delivering a style of politics that might be described as being old style. He is saying nice stuff in nice ways, which is diplomatic and is intended to please all of the people all of the time. But we live in a world that doesn't match that anymore. We live in a hard-hitting social media environment where people like blunt simplicity to the point of rudeness, and that's the kind of environment. Now, that's not Keir Starmer. And if he's trying to be that, he's going to fail. And in order to try and have some of those things, so yes, there is something slightly synthetic about it, and it is an impression I have got, and it is... I think either he's got to adapt and change the personality he is somewhat, or perhaps somebody else who actually fits some of those slightly more hard-hitting 21st century attitudes to politics needs to come in.
Okay, let's move away from the personality and back to the policy and the strategy. How do these changes, this reshuffle, how do you think it's going to shape Labour's long-term strategy then going forward?
They've got a huge task ahead. It seems like a long time, 4 years between now and the next general election. I mean, maybe early, but most likely it'll be about 4 years' time. And there is an enormous amount to do. I think I'll come back. I sound like a slightly broken record here, but I'll come back to my original point, that the electorate will respond to results. They will respond to getting some of the things that they have struggled with really since 2008, since the economic crash in 2008, and then the end of the Labour government, and then the Conservatives, now the Labour, and all the things, and they've seen their standard of living worsen, they've seen their health service get worse, they've seen their education policy. So until some of those things get better, that's a massive turnaround for the government. And at the same time, Labour is going to have to appease the left and the right. Those are two very polar opposites at the moment, and how you do that, well, is going to involve a lot of extremely competent, extremely expert advice. So does it change, help prepare for the next general election? If they get it right, is my flippant answer.
The big question. Phil, always a pleasure to hear your analysis. Thank you very much for joining us. Okay, that does bring us to the end of NewsHour. We've examined how the changes inside Number 10 reflect both the challenges and the opportunities facing Britain's leadership, from economic stability to political messaging. The government's next steps will be closely watched. For now, that's all from this edition of NewsHour. From all of us here at AnewZ, thank you for watching.
We are in one of the frontline areas of Ukraine. Being here and seeing things, talking to people, we can clearly tell that the war has changed drastically since its beginning in 2022. Or maybe not. Is that really the case? The war has been going on since 2014.
Ратифицировать подготовленный для подписания договор о вхождении Республики Крым и города Севастополь в Российскую Федерацию. Не сомневаюсь в вашей поддержке.
У 2014 році Росія прийшла до нас з одним словом, з новим словом. І це слово – війна.
Some people serving here, they have been in military in this war so long. It's difficult for them to tell how they will be able to return to a normal civilian life. The story of all those people who can withstand aggression, withstand grief, and withstand their lives changing forever.
Тяжело. Но держусь. Держитесь и вы все, кого я знал и с кем я был. Слава Украине! Победа за нами!
Мой муж каждый день выходил в 8 утра и приходил в 4 дня.
My husband used to leave every day at 8 in the morning and return at 4 in the afternoon, like going to work. By 4 o'clock, I would already be looking out the window to see where he was. By 5, I knew he wasn't coming. I can't even speak about it properly.
Что-то я не могу нормально говорить.
In March 2022, the Kiev suburb of Bucha became a symbol of Russian occupation, a place where hundreds of civilians were killed and others endured weeks of terror. Survivors are still piecing together what happened and why.
We're
standing now in what's more of a small square or park with trees planted in rows. Each tree bears a tag with the name of someone killed in Bucha during the occupation. On Yablunska Street and the nearby area, around 120 people were killed, either from gunshot wounds or from being denied medical assistance.
The killings did not distinguish between soldiers and civilians. Witnesses say Russian troops opened fire on men, women, the elderly, and even those who supported Moscow.
Apart from killing civilians and patriots, they also killed people who supported the so-called Russian world. Among the dead are people who welcomed their arrival, and yet they killed them anyway.
Amid the danger, residents risked their lives to help others, teaching neighbors how to avoid soldiers, hide in basements, and survive.
Our role during the occupation was to study people's psychology and teach civilians how to behave to survive. We found certain keys, certain strategies during the occupation, and we believe those helped save lives.
The psychological effect of the occupation was so heavy, some people still carry the trauma of those days.
We, the residents, including myself, stayed in the basement. There were so many soldiers that life became unbearable. Over time, my health worsened. I developed a severe stammer. I'm getting treatment now, thanks to those who are helping me.
Some encounters with Russian forces were moments of life or death.
Those men from Bucha, under the barrels of assault rifles, turned around and said, "Don't touch the doctor, let him go." If they hadn't done that, I'd have been taken prisoner too. Only God knows if I'd have survived.
Others remember the surreal mix of war and fleeting humanity.
On 8th March, International Women's Day. Even with the war and shelling, I took a